So, Tim Burton is a gigantic pervert. Um, so I believe the only honest way to respond to certain characters like Catwoman, which is obviously like where his passion is in Batman Returns, is to respond pervertedly. I would say, uh, Catwoman is a remarkable screen character, and of course, it's a purely Burton character now. It's a supernatural character, a psychotic woman just obsessed with revenge and killing the ultimate patriarch, right? And Michelle Pfeiffer just, if you're not completely like sexually obsessed with Michelle Pfeiffer in this movie, then you're dead to me, and you're probably just dead like anyway. No, Michelle Pfeiffer is absolutely amazing in this film. I think it's a real missed opportunity as well. Tim Burton loves his blondes. He loves his suicide blondes. He loves his muses, and like traditionally, his muses are Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, Lisa Marie, even Eva Green these days. I think Michelle Pfeiffer is a real missed opportunity. I know she worked with him again in Dark Shadows, but the way that Tim Burton seems to photograph her, it feels like he is positively obsessed with her, and it's one of those great happenstances, one of those lucky accidents, because Annette Bening was originally supposed to play this role all the way up to like almost filming, until she revealed that she was pregnant, and this is not a role that you can do in that sort of condition. So Michelle Pfeiffer got the role. She wasn't like the first choice. She was actually the last,
Oh,
and
wow.
thank God for that. This film, for Tim Burton to return to Batman after he really made the stylistic statement that he wanted to make, stylistic statement through neo-expressionism, through German expressionism, through lights, shadows, comic, fairy tales. He already did all of that, so he had to find something that was really the motivating spirit, the inspiration behind Batman Returns. And you can tell whenever Catwoman is on screen, that is when Tim Burton is creatively alive. In a very perverse kind of way as well, because it is like S&M Catwoman. This is hyper erotica Catwoman, and she completely like steals my breath away, of course, because she's so absurd, she's so psychotic, she's so homicidal, she's so unexpected, and she's so fucking perfect to look at. Because Michelle Pfeiffer is obviously one of the most beautiful women, probably photographed in the world. But I love the Catwoman scenes because that's when Tim Burton is truly feeling alive, and that's really what he wanted to express. I even know the original versions of this screenplay was just Catwoman, and he was asked to incorporate a larger villain. I think specifically he was asked to incorporate the Penguin, and once again he did that in an amazing way as well.
Yeah.
Like, that character is extremely Burton as well, but his love is really for this uh, supernatural bondage femme fatale for this Michelle Pfeiffer, who really it goes beyond giving a great melodramatic or campy performance. It's a legendary performance. It's a genre defining as well as a decade defining performance, and it's one that has rocked my world senselessly and sensually since I've seen it, since I first saw it when I was a child. I love Catwoman in this film, and I think Tim Burton does as well. And if there's any like thing you take from this film, I think it's the hyperkinetic poetics, the gothic atmospherics that Tim Burton imbibed this character with, the raw sex appeal. It's completely incredible. And of course, Penguin, Danny DeVito, like holy shit! Like, what did you think of Danny DeVito in this film?
Um, I think okay, so like a couple days ago, I was talking about watching this with a few friends, and they all turned it down simply because they felt that the penguin was just too gross, and that's because Danny DeVito really fucking just went all in with
Mm-hmm.
this character. The little grunts he does is so unsettling.
Of
It's
course, and
just
if he
like,
gets too worked up, bile and black blood just starts spewing out of his mouth.
yeah, it's fucking disgusting and it's great.
Oh, and it speaks
Um,
to my premise that Tim Burton is a pervert, and this is maybe his most perverted film. Is that the Penguin is just a it's just a completely completely perverted, a sexual deviant, if there ever was one. His little flipper trick, right?
My French flipper trick. Oh my god. Yeah, yeah, I love that the penguin was kind of there almost as if it was like you have like law and then the the opposite of law, whatever that would be. And then you have like in the middle just complete chaos of the penguin. And I would say usually chaos would be the opposite of law, but I guess he's not really worried about the law because I feel like Catwoman was intentionally acting out um to kind of discover herself. Like she was trying to figure out who she is and kind of like fight against um these structures, I guess. But the penguin's just very self-indulgent. He's just everything he's doing is for himself, but he's also very manipulative or able to be manipulated because of it.
Well, if one thing transfers over from the comic book with Penguin, it's that like I don't think he's necessarily a chaotic figure. I don't think he's a chaotic presence. I think Catwoman's much more chaotic, but because like the Joker would be the chaotic presence, and he
Yeah.
certainly explored that in the first Batman film. Penguin, I think, is like a symbol of the inherent or like inevitable corruptibility of like politicians of the elite class, like how our politicians and how the upper crust of society are actually monsters this entire time. I think this film is a bit about authenticity, and obviously, if there's any bit of dialogue with like true, proper meaning, it's a few lines. Like I love Catwoman's lines of right before Christopher Walken pushes her out a window of "How can you be so mean to someone so meaningless?" You know, it is about how certain privileged people take advantage of those who have nothing, and at the same time that causes a rift, right? So that causes two separate personalities. I like to think that Michael Keaton's performance is extremely good because I think there's an obvious longing that exists between Bruce and Selina, but I think that Bruce is secretly like he seems incredibly depressed and dispossessed and disassociated in this film. I think that he's exactly as psychotic as Selina. He just expresses it in a way that might be a different kind of chaotic good, really. I think that when they're talking to each other about how they're split asunder, split in two, I think that really speaks to really the great theme of the film because it can be transferred over. I mean, obviously Michelle Pfeiffer, she's an independent woman in the early 90s inside of this like gothic comic fairy tale landscape of Tim Burton's, trying to be a powerful figure in a world that seems dominated by men. And the way that she does it is by placating to their perversions and really liberating herself in that same process of ultra violence and chaos. But it's transferred over easily to Penguin. I mean, talk about split asunder. He was born into one of the wealthiest families in Gotham, along with Bruce Wayne, except he was they completely rid themselves of him because he was deranged, he was a monster, he was deformed, and he went to the underworld, the extreme underworld, to like a band of like circus misfits, and that's his second personality as well, and one dominates over the other. And since Tim Burton is a misfit auteur, it's always that misfit aspect of your personality that is more authentic or more truthful, or like at least has the ability to express yourself more coherently. So that's why like Selina latches onto the Catwoman misfit personality. Bruce obviously latches onto the Batman split.
Yeah, I guess you could see that in all the characters, and not even just the three main ones, but Shrek as well. Not Shrek, but
well, yeah, Christopher Walken's character has a public face and a true face.
yeah, and so I think it really was Yeah, it's very present throughout the entire movie for sure.
And I think it's really well done in that facet of the film, because I mean, this Tim Burton is a man who champions misfits, and of course in his Batman films it's fascinating because most superhero films imbibe themselves of like a Randian, like objectivist philosophy, and that's completely absent in Burton's Batman films. Because Burton Batman films are about misfits who are pinned off against other misfits, and there's not like some superiority. There's not some sort of capitalist savior syndrome going on. What it really is just misfits writ large finding themselves, trying to find their true authenticity and their true self-expression.
I actually really enjoy these movies because outside of them just being completely ridiculous, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Outside of them just being completely like ridiculous and just a joy to watch, they're kind of like proud of their weirdness, and I really enjoy that in films. I think a lot of movies are kind of avoiding that now.
Burton waves that freak flag high and proud.
Yeah, and I feel like so many movies, like if any director was given Batman now, like it would never look anywhere close to this.
Well, I mean, that's not a theory. There hasn't been a Batman movie that's looked remotely close to this.
No, I'm just saying, like, no one would ever do it.
I
don't feel like anyone would do it.
Well, because no one should, because this is an auteur-made film. I don't think you can replicate this style like with integrity.
I don't mean to replicate it. I mean to just. I don't know how to put it.
We're talking about the genre as a whole.
No, just movies as a whole, really. Like, there's not movies that really just are weird, but are good.
There are, and especially in the early 90s, this was
in the
almost
90s,
a fad.
I'm talking about now.
Yeah, but I mean, why aren't there westerns every 2 months
That's
now?
fair.
Because
no, and that's I guess that's a very good point, or a very fair point, is that like there's always fads in everything, so it's just a matter of
I mean, 90s was peak Burton, but not only that, you had like the Burton kind of like derivatives, like the Addams Family movies and like shit like that. Animation was getting kind of like. Well, then again, Burton had his hands in animation in the 90s as well. I mean, he really defined that decade and the next one, arguably. But today, if we are just talking about Batman films as a whole, just momentarily, it might be a tangent, but I think it's a worthwhile one. What makes these Burton films so memorable and so unforgettable is that they are Tim Burton films first and superhero films second. And if we were to compare this to other Batmans, I mean, there's no comparison to the Schumacher ones. Those are toy commercials, and Tim Burton wasn't particularly interested in like the consumerist side of making these big budget studio superhero films. I mean, the toy companies were kind of confused.
Sure, everyone wanted that fucking car, though.
Oh yeah, but everyone was really confused about how to make a toy out of the Penguin, right? Like, how do you make like, or make a toy out of Catwoman that isn't obscene? That kind of idea. That doesn't just look like a walking like oversexed corpse. I love it, but still. The Joel Schumacher films are toy commercials. I mean, Batman and Robin, I think on the commentary he goes so far as to say, like, we made some of this stuff just for toy sales. And then, of course, Christopher Nolan's films, which is truly the competition when we're talking about Batman films and which ones are the best. And, and like I said earlier, the Nolan films are... they put the Randian philosophy into overdrive, which makes them like honest, like superhero films. But at the same time, Burton's films, they're just incomparable. You just can't really compare them to Nolan's Batman films, because Burton's not particularly interested in Batman. I know on the first one he really liked 2 comic books. Like, he liked The Killing Joke and The Dark Knight Returns. He liked those. He didn't like many others, and those had like just come out. They weren't like old. They were like brand new Alan Moore and Frank Miller stuff. So
Mhm.
these films are completely Tim Burton. They have more in common with Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, and Sleepy Hollow than they do with Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. Just incomparable kind of ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think we talked about that a little bit earlier too, um outside of the video.
Well, they don't know that.
That's why I had to say it. No, but but yeah, no, there's just like a certain kind of magic that comes from this movie that um makes me wish that other movies could find a way to do so as well. Because like I don't really care for superhero movies as a
Oh
whole.
no, yeah. Don't feel
Um
afraid to say that. Not a lot of people do who watch this channel.
I don't, and I specifically don't care for well, not only do I not care for Nolan as a whole, I didn't really care for his Batman movies that much. The one with Joker was pretty good, but other than that, like, I don't really care.
But once again, they're incomparable.
Yeah,
Like,
no, but that's what I'm saying is like, I don't really care about superhero movies, yet this movie does go beyond superhero movies, and that's why I love it so much, because to me this is more like what I think a comic book come to life should be,
it certainly
because
influenced
it's very
the Bruce Timm
otherworldly.
animated series. It certainly influenced that, like, aesthetically.
Yeah, it's very otherworldly, which,
And of course, that Danny Elfman score is my favorite Tim Burton score in Batman Returns and in Batman. It's instantly recognizable. I think it's perfect tonally. I think it's like beautiful in these gothic chromatic lines. And a lot of people don't like this movie. In fact, a lot of people don't like the Tim Burton Batman movies, but specifically not Batman Returns. It's often referred to as the worst Tim Burton Batman movie by people who just don't know how to have any fun. This movie, you are spoiled with creativity. You are spoiled with gags. You are spoiled with these hyperkinetic images that just boom, like, you can't believe that certain things are happening to this day because it is so absurd. It is so camp. It is so outlandish. It is so Tim Burton.
I would call those people comic thumpers.
Possibly, I would call them. I mean, like I said, like, about people who
Boring.
you're being spoiled with this film. You are being spoiled by an auteur with an almost unlimited budget, and everything he does in this film is truthful to that uniqueness, to that vision, to that singularly specific vision. And you're being spoiled in an artful way. You're not being lectured to. You're not being given propaganda like you are with most superhero movies. You are being given a fairy tale. You're being given a fable, and a fable is always better than some sort of propagandized message.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I walked away from that movie learning anything. I just felt like I walked away enjoying it.
But if you choose to be contemplative, you certainly can be. You know, what's inherent in the Batman character is that split personality, and which one is more truthful or authentic. And like I said earlier, Tim Burton, I think, will always side with that misfit part of you, to wave that freak flag, to embrace your what makes you an outsider, what makes you such a misfit, what makes you so such an outcast, ostracized even, and to really accentuate that, even if it's towards a tragic ending, like Catwoman and Penguins, obviously, but they lived, and they lived truthfully in that moment by embracing their misfit ideology and their misfit identity and personality. Like, there is still that if you want to contemplate it. If you don't, and you probably shouldn't anyway, Michelle Pfeiffer is smoking fucking hot. And she's running around in extremely tight leather, and when she's not in that, she just looks so incredible anyway, and it's a wonderful performance. This is peak Pfeiffer, and you know, Tim Burton, really young, really energetic, and like, I don't know about top of his game, but certainly a string of Pee-wee, Batman, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, and then Batman Returns is quite a great string of movies in a row, and like, all those movies were successful. I mean, he feels like he's hot shit right now, and it shows. He is cocky, he is confident, and to me, he pulls it off, and he goes further than he arguably should have, but I think he pulls it off each time. It's very extravagant. You know, like, I like that. Yeah. I like that, though. It's Burton going like, And I know that Burton pitched a Batman 3 after this movie. Like, he went to WB and he pitched his ideas for a third Batman movie. A lot of people think that Tim just didn't want to make the third one. No, they didn't want him back to make that third movie. I think they were thinking about toy sales. I think they were thinking about children's entertainment. And Tim Burton is not a person who makes films specifically for, I think, any specific age. I think that he makes these kind of gothic fairy tales, and fairy tales are for all ages. This wasn't a film made for toy sales. It wasn't made a film made for children, as a substitute for a babysitter put on the television. It wasn't made for that. And the studio definitely wanted someone who would play a more conventional type of ball, and they got that with Joel Schumacher.
Yeah. It's really hard for me to like try to dissect this movie and pull something out of it. Because with this kind of movie, you were just kind of pulled into it and your brain just kind of shuts off.
Yeah, because you're being spoiled by all the visuals, and
it's fantastic. I do really like. A lot of people love to make fun of the costume design in this movie. With Batman not being able to turn his head and stuff like that.
Whoever makes fun of that is just a loser. I never notice it. Even when he rips off his mask, which is beautifully done. Like, even when he does that, I don't notice it ever. Like, it's not an issue to me. It doesn't, like...
Yeah, I don't care.
It's not an impediment on my, like, enjoyment of this film.
I don't care that he's wearing a giant rubber suit.
And if you're looking at the dude in the fucking rubber suit while Michelle Pfeiffer's running around in elastic leather, you're watching the wrong part of the frame. Tim Burton doesn't even want you to look at Batman in this movie. That's why he's so sidelined in it. He wants to focus on Catwoman.
Yeah. No, but I think that Batman looks just the way you would expect Batman to look, and like his car is over the top, which is what I love. Because I guess in my mind, this will always be what Batman is supposed to be.
Oh, I love the costume. And Keaton's the one that I grew up with, really. Keaton and Kilmer, maybe you can argue, or Kevin Conroy. But this is my favorite one. I love Michael Keaton as Batman. I love the mystique, the look, the gold on black. I love that. I love it dearly, actually. It's great costume design. The set design is just so opulent. He had these like German expressionistic statues, like huge monuments made for this film. Like oh my god, dude! Like this entire movie is just.
And if you think about it, if you weren't paying attention to the progress of the story, you would think the entire movie was shot at night. Because that's the idea of the city of Gotham, is that it's just a city blanketed in night, pretty much.
Absolutely, he has the Dark Knight aesthetic down perfectly, but I would argue that Dark Knight aesthetic just vibes with Burton's anyway.
Oh yeah,
and that that's not something he consciously chose to do. I just think that's when Burton looks best. That's when that photography looks best, most stunning. Most energetic and moving.
I think my favorite shot of the entire film was when I guess this is kind of a more modern way of looking at it, but when the camera's kind of like droning through the zoo.
Yeah, with all the miniatures and things, he has. Everything about this movie is like magic. It's magical. It's what filmmaking is. It truly is an illusion. It doesn't matter if you could see through the illusion. The fact that the magician exists who's that ballsy is something really to behold. I do love that shot. My shot, if you couldn't guess, is when Catwoman does like the backflips to when Penguin and Batman first meet each other outside that like department store, and she just meow. And it just fucking explodes.
Yeah, it's a
cinema.
It's a brilliant scene.
Cinema. That's a perfect scene, man.
It is.
She's perfectly photographed. I think that like at its most inspired is these Selena Kyle shots. I think one of them has been going on and off in the background here, but when she's on that department store logo of the cat of the Shrek cat, I guess, and like she's perfectly symmetrical within it, and like of course that has poetic meanings of like the woman inside of the logo, the woman inside of this business, the woman being taken for granted by this business even, and the cat on top of the cat. Of course, you know, I mean, these are literal metaphors. These don't really involve any kind of like interpretation, but it's just so beautifully framed. It's so awesome, dude. It's an incredible film to me. A lot of people don't like the film, right? And like the thing they love to point out are the penguins with the missiles attached to body armor around their backs, and it's like,
what's not to love?
Well, first of all, yes, what's not to love? That is cinema. Secondly, that's the part that got you. I mean, we saw a woman being brought back to life supernaturally by ravenous cats at that point. You know, the infamous flipper trick, penguin biting people's noses off like this. We saw so many incredibly crazy things. I mean, penguin on that like what do you call them? They're outside like drugstores with that little like his own little Batmobile thing that like
I thought that was adorable. By the way, it was fucking cool.
But if the penguins get you with the missiles, then you're just looking not to have fun at that point. Like if that's the point that pushed you over, then you're really blind to the fact that the entire film is that absurd. It doesn't ramp it up. If it does ramp it up, it's for climatic purposes. We're about to reach the climax of the film.
Yeah. And it is. It's like, are you sitting there with a fucking notepad?
And it pays off beautifully. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer willing to die and sacrifice herself 7, 8 times just to get that one piece of revenge that matters to her femininity, to her liberation, to her as a woman. Like, there are things that matter in this film, right? And of course, Penguin being the orphaned boy, and this is the unofficial first film in the Danny DeVito, Tim Burton Circus trilogy, comprised of Batman Returns, Big Fish, and Dumbo, all feature Danny DeVito in a circus in some sort of capacity. And just to really ram this point home, since Tim Burton's an auteur and talks about the same things constantly, like any good author should with his signature, it's about finding an adopted family. It's about creating your own family structure. And of course, the Penguin created his, something that the upstairs elite world couldn't give him, which is loyalty, which is feeding his ego, allowing him to be as manic as he wants to be. And of course, Batman's trying to find something to be attached to, whereas Michelle Pfeiffer, Selena Kyle, I think, is doing everything she can to not be attached to anything while she is Catwoman, because she is trying to liberate herself. And she's also on a suicide kamikaze mission as well. She knows she's not going to live through this experience, because that's part of the purpose. That's deliberately part of the point of what she's doing, is to send some kind of female message that's extremely powerful, chaotic, sexy, and relentless. And I know that the end scene where she lives, that was a studio decision, and that's like a stand-in. That's not Michelle Pfeiffer at the very end there looking at the bat signal, but I think it works in this film. That's a studio decision that I think benefits the film, because at least symbolically, Tim Burton, Selena Kyle will live on in manic, psychopathic fashion. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and I definitely got the vibes of like my favorite, like, still, I guess, like if you pause the film and just stare at it like it's a picture, was when she finally finished her suit and she's standing there in the window.
Oh yes,
with the hell here.
Yeah, the sign used to say "Hello there." Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. That hot pink sign, because it is feminine and it is sexy, and it does intimidate and speak directly to like male insatiability and irresistibility, right? Like, and that's her power. So what she was being minimized for, what she was afraid to expose, and what men tried to kind of exploit from her, she was now weaponizing. She was now weaponizing her frailty, weaponizing her sexuality, weaponizing her aggression that she does have, or that she did have, but kept it inside because of the men, the patriarchs, who would obviously push her out a window, who would punish her for that. I think Catwoman's an amazing character. I think this is a wonderful rendition of Catwoman. Yeah, comic thumpers, of course. Comic thumpers hate this movie, like as a principle, since it's not interested in being comic book accurate, and it shouldn't be. That's how it's a good movie. That is how it is a good movie. You want something to be comic book accurate? Read the comic. Read it. No one's stopping you from reading it.
Yeah.
When you're making a film, I want to see that director's true vision. I want that director to be truthful about his attractions, about his perversions, about his wants, desires, and fantasies, his revenge fantasies. I want it to be truthful, and Tim Burton is truthful here.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of adaptations anyways. They've never really been my thing. Because I feel like if you're going to adapt something, you have to reimagine it, or else you're...
Which Tim Burton is a king.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful. And that's why, like, well, The Shining is better than the book. But the fact that it's so different from the book, like, that's just a perfect example.
That is just such a large... Man, move on.
No, but
you can't just drop no, dude, we're not talking about The Shining.
We're not going to talk about The Shining, but it's an example I like to bring up.
Of course, it's better than the book, but it would take 2 hours to explain why.
I don't want to explain why. I want to use it as an example that you don't always have to try to stay true to the original in order to make it good.
We could keep it within this frame of thought, within Burton's universe. I mean, Sleepy Hollow, I think, is better than the original Washington Irving tale.
Okay.
Like Dark Shadows is better than the soap opera that it was based off of, and Batman Returns is better than most Batman comics.
Yeah, I would agree with most, for sure. There's definitely a few out there that
I notice I left off the poor Burton reimaginings on purpose. But, I mean, he always has the confidence to do it. He's fearless to disappoint. So even when he does misfire with Alice in Wonderland or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it is a way that no one else would have misfired. No one else would have fucked up like that.
I feel like the reimagining of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was almost there.
We'll talk about that soon. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll talk about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory eventually.
Yeah.
But Batman Returns, it's a reimagining of every factor of Batman. And in part, it's a reimagining of his first Batman as well. Like, he has to deconstruct what he constructed in the first film. And that's really fascinating, too, on an artistic and artful level. Tim Burton, yeah, he's stunning. And especially when he's cocky, especially when he's a little bit arrogant like he is here. And he's really open with his audience.
Yeah, it's definitely been a long time since I've seen the other one is it's just Batman and Robin, right?
No, Batman.
Batman?
Mm-hmm.
Who did Batman and Robin?
Joel Schumacher.
Okay, never mind then. Yeah, I might have to just see the first one then, because I'm trying to wrap my head around what it was about.
The Joker.
It was the Joker. I don't remember it at all then, dude.
Jack Nicholson.
I don't.
Creepy Uncle Joker.
I really don't remember
Maybe you've never seen it, and it's a great movie.
There's a possibility that I've never seen it, but I'd be surprised.
I mean, I like Batman Returns, like, by a very narrow margin more.
Yeah.
And that's specifically because Jack Nicholson doesn't give me a cinema boner. But if he did, that one, Batman, the first one, is incredible.
I don't know, that smile, though? Jack Nicholson's smile?
It's a great smile. Well, you must not have seen this movie, because it's like Tim Burton adds prosthetics to that smile and makes it even kind of creepier. And there's a lot of prints in it, but
all right,
we'll get to that in the future. Yeah, we did the sequel before we did the first one.
I'm gonna, for the next time we do this, I'm gonna try to figure out why the lights are so bright. Because when my camera's pointed the other way, it's not. And see, like, put my hand up, it fixes it, but then it's trying to readjust. I think it's because of the black curtain behind us.
Yeah, I'm a little less bright than you.
Yeah, I'll make that better for next time, guys.
You fucking better.
Yeah, you deserve better.
This is high quality. Alright, I think that's good.
All right, guys.